Welcome to the Shogun podcast, where the Lorehounds, your guides to the political intrigues of feudal Japan. I'm David.
And I'm Elysia, and this is our coverage for episode 7, titled Stick of Time of the FX limited series Shogun.
John's out again this week. I'll share a bit more about things at the end of the podcast. However, he should be back next week and for the rest of the season. So today we're going to start off with our hot takes for the episode. I've got a couple of historical notes, and then after that, we will get into a fuller discussion of the plot, characters, along with our favorite moments. I don't think we've got any listener feedback this week, but did you grab anything off the Discord?
Yeah, I grabbed some. Of course, we've got the historical check-in with resident historian Nate.
Nate, yeah.
And yeah, a few more points that people brought up that are interesting.
Sounds good.
And yeah, for the rest of you, please do send us feedback. We love to hear your thoughts and reactions. We have an email just for the show called shogun@thelorehounds.com. Or you can just head to the contact page on the website, and you can use the form there or record us a voicemail. And we can drop that right into the podcast. We love that.
You can support the community on Supercast or Patreon, or you can join the conversation on Discord and take a listen to all of our different affiliate podcasts. We're bringing a new podcast online for Fallout.
I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, Aaron and who's one of our Discord moderators and a buddy of his are really excited to cover the stuff. So we kind of went back to John and I's roots, and we're sort of shepherding them along with their very first podcast. So anyway, everything that you need, links, all of them are in the show notes. And yeah, you can join us on the Discord or support the community. Elysia, this was a heck of an episode. How are you feeling? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it almost feels like a penultimate episode. And then it's like, oh my gosh, we have 3 more. It's crazy. Well, I have especially complex feelings about Nobukatsu.
Okay.
Who I both love and hate, very ambivalent. Yeah, he was so much fun, and we'll get into it. But also, obviously, heartbreaking twist that I kind of saw coming just by how fun he was, because characters in this world apparently aren't allowed to have fun. But I do agree with him. What a waste about Nagakado.
Right. Oh, flirkin alert.
They're at their fun, playful time of day.
Right. Perfect time for podcasting.
Just after breakfast. Yeah.
All right. So if you hear any cat noise in the background, it's all good.
Yeah,
so
apologies.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's been being compared with Gawain from Wheel of Time and Joffrey from Game of Thrones, and I think especially the latter is unfair. He is not. He is not or never was evil, and that's kind of why I have a softer spot from Gawain's a character from the books. Show watchers will meet him this season. I'm sure he's going to be much more likable in the show, but he's so earnest, and I love an earnest character, you know?
Cool.
Yeah. Gin, obviously, low-key, most valuable player.
Right. Oh, my Lord. Somebody posted on the Discord, there was an article somewhere on the internet about how the women are the low-key dominant force in this show. I mean, the men are out there doing all the showy stuff and blowing each other up with cannons, but it's the women who are really owning the space, a lot of the spaces in this. Driving a lot of
I mean, you love to see it, especially just showing how women exert power in a society structured to keep them from it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so there's only one more episode there is an entire episode between this and Crimson Sky. So what is going to happen between where things were left here and all hell breaking loose? If this show in the hands of another season or in another streamer or production company, there's so many different things that they would do. It would be, I think they would camp up the romance, but this would be a cliffhanger season ender or a penultimate, and then you'd have season 2, and that would be the play out of Crimson Sky. But my Lord, they're doing it all in one season. They're like really packing this down. I have mixed feelings about that, right? Because I don't know. I love the pacing though, because
for sure.
One show that I'm watching now that I'm loving, but the pacing's going a little too breakneck for me, is X-Men 97.
Oh, and so I think you said you wanted to talk about that. Is John watching it too?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so maybe we'll have to talk about it sometime. It's been a while since we've had an MCU-related podcast out.
we're like 4 weeks in out of a total 10 or something like that. Sorry, I don't have
so maybe a mid-season check-in or something.
Okay. Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah. Cool. Anyway, so you were saying about pacing.
Just in comparison, the pacing here seems perfect. I'm appreciating the pacing.
For sure. I think that's one of the things, especially about this particular episode. I was like an emotionally hot mess at the end of this. And it's like not a lot happened, but everything happened and everything changed by the end of this. And the entire episode, they just kept notching up the dramatic tension so that when the end came for Nobukatsu, it was it released all that tension that had been building up, and then I was just confused about like what was going on, but in a good way. I was like, oh my god, like what does this mean? How is this going to play out? And for them to run and then to introduce a major antagonist in episode 7 that we haven't even met yet,
but immediately iconic. Like
immediately
they gave him the best wardrobe in the entire show.
That hat.
That was too much. And the furry shoulders.
Yes,
like he's just like, I am a freaking wolf and you will know it.
So they introduced Ochiba in 5 and now Sakai in 7. I think I'm getting that name right. Sakai?
Right.
Yeah.
That's Sakai. Oh yeah, I think it's Sakei. I don't know.
Saeki. Yeah. Okay. But that's just crazy confident filmmaking, right? Like to go, oh yeah, we're just going to drop in a major antagonist in episode 7.
Right.
It's good. Incredible. I'm just really so impressed by this production team. And then the actors and their performances, Buntaro, Yabushige, Lady Gin, Sakai even. I mean, all of them are just tip-top.
Seiki? I don't know.
Seiki? Yeah, I think it might be Sakai? Something like that. Oh boy, we're going to get
apologize.
It for this. We do. We're trying. We are actually trying.
Abby, send us more vocal guidance.
We need her just on a side chat, right?
Yeah.
Just dropping the... Anyway, so did you have any more thoughts, or I've got a bunch?
No, please go.
Okay, yeah. And like you said, we keep trying to angle away from Game of Thrones, but we can't help it. And
this is the stuff that Game of Thrones is modeled off of, like the European version. But yeah,
true. That's very true. And we've talked about this the fact that human history is rich with this kind of storytelling. And, you don't need to make up, 18-toed aliens to have a good story. We just have to look into our own human past. And anyway, during the episode and before the sort of trap is sprung, I was really worried that it was going to turn into a Red Wedding situation if we want to throw in another comp.
Right.
There were a couple of scenes of some of the samurai sitting around the campfire eating, and I was like, "Uh-oh, here it comes!" Right? They're gonna. And then they showed up around, but I thought it was going to actually be like a murderous situation. But a lot of again, more great tension, and then the humor ratio. It's so perfectly mixed in, and they're not playing for the stupid, obtuse joke. But the characters are saying the things that they would say. Yabushige, oh, well, it depends on the woman. I mean, what kind of comment is that? But it completely breaks the tension and is a hilarious character comment. So,
yeah, well, that is like humor's tension release, and they employ that perfectly to diffuse, to give you a little relief from the tension. Yeah, exactly.
And then when another comp, like when we go back to House of the Dragon and we talk about season 1, and what a slog. I loved that season, but it was a slog at times emotionally because there was no Yabushige to throw in a little silly comment or, something like that to happen to break it before we go into the next round of tension. So yeah, these showrunners really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I just want to shout out to some of the cinematography in this episode. Mariko with the knife, and behind her, and I posted a picture of this in our Discord. She's holding the knife out, and we're looking over Toranaga's shoulder, and behind her is one of those braziers And so there's this hot fire, but it's a kind of a cold blue scene at the same time with the knife. And it was just like, oh, so good. Or Nagakato's dying. We're kind of looking at him from above, right? And they use a lot of direct overhead shots, especially in this episode. But then as the camera kind of rotates around, the actor rotates his head to follow the angle of the camera.
The directing and cinematography is next level.
So that then at the end, the camera is at water level looking straight across, and then his face is facing us. Not and then it was beautiful with his uncle standing behind him, like absolutely visually gorgeous. And then something I noticed as I was doing my notes, wrapping up the episode on my second watch, I heard the sounds of the rain, which is the background diegenic sound that's going on in the scene with the crickets and whatnot. Usually it goes to a point, and then maybe they'll kick in some other song for to go through all of the credits, through all of the, all the different side variation jobs, all the way through the translators and the international translators, stuff like that. There's no other music. It's just rain and cricket sounds all the way through to the very end when they have the final card about the production company or whatever.
Right.
Incredible. Right. Absolutely incredible. So you're just sitting there with his death. So whenever you decide to click out, you're still left
that's
with
why I hate the autoplay next episode thing for people who watch it later. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's like 16 seconds, 15 seconds. You got, no, I want to listen to this song. Or
let me, I'm like, don't make me do things now. I'm processing. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm still sort of settling into what happened. A couple of key themes that I picked up in this that don't really fit into our plot and character conversation, but there's a lot of fog in this episode. All when they're meeting on the roadway, when they're meeting his half brother, when at various scenes around the hot springs or just in town, or when the guards are up in the hills and that kind of stuff. And I thought, oh well, that actually is a really great metaphor for the lack of clarity that is surrounding Toranaga and his clan and his allies. Nobody's really sure what's going on. Nobody has a clear picture of what the terrain looks like, or what is it that we're going to be facing, or how big the army is that's coming towards us.
Yeah, I have a question. Do you remember? Because now I'm wondering how much I'm confusing scenes I've seen in this with scenes that I've seen in that Netflix docuseries, Age of Samurai.
Oh, right. I haven't watched. I think I watched one episode of that so far.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of episode 4. But so is there fog when they show, for instance, the bandits having killed people? Like, could the fog be linked to a sense of danger?
Yeah, I think the first fight scene that we had on the road did not have fog. When it was it Sugiyama, or was it one of the other regions who attacked Toranaga's group when they went out? And then there was, it's so long ago. It seems like
I know.
Call back to these
weekly releases.
Yeah. Or when Yabushige takes Blackthorn, sort of into his custody. I don't. The only other time of fog that I can really remember is when Blackthorn's ship shows up first, and Muraji is out there on the coastline and sort of encounters it. That's the only time I remember a heavy fog. There could have been more other fog other places, because there's been times where Blackthorn and Mariko are, up on the cliffs talking, and it's clear, right? There's not fog shrouding it. So yeah, that's a good point. It'd be interesting to go back and look to see where they've employed it. Yes, exactly. Another interesting thing that I picked up on was this idea that Sakei mentions, which is, do you want stories, legends, or truths? And I thought that, combined with the flashback, really paired together, really creates an incredible framing device for this whole episode. And a lot of these episodes, they'll take a central idea or a theme and then play with it. So like, the Secret of Three Hearts or what have you. And it really, I thought it was just a very clever use, this idea of, well, what's a story? Oh, well, it's kind of an entertainment. It reaffirms our social bonds. So if we're sitting around or getting coffee together, oh, remember the time that so-and-so did such and such? Oh, that was hilarious. And that's a kind of social interaction where we're affirming each other's, our relationship with each other. And again, sort of reliving some nostalgia. Versus legend, which is, maybe it's some sort of morality tale, or we should derive some, greater meaning from it, or, a way to strike fear into the hearts of our enemies because he was such a great, a 12-year-old Toranaga was such a master general. I mean, one stroke, all of this kind of stuff versus the truth, where it really is not as linear or as simple as.
But that's how history is told, and especially the further back you go in history, the more dramatic the retellings are. Like the Romans, they were facing legions of thousands and they crushed them. And it was like 100 people in a cart,
Exactly. And so then when we throw that in with the flashback, and then they leave us on the final image of 12-year-old Toranaga bringing the downstroke of his sword and then ending it there. Not until later do we learn so they sprung a little trap, not a trap on us, but they created a sense of drama, and then it's operating in the background of our minds the entire episode until we get Hiramatsu saying, "Well, yeah, you made a bloody mess of it, my man. You were like 9 strokes in."
It was horrifying. Oh,
and then Toranaga's like, who picks a child for their second? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. The humor in this show is dark, but I appreciate dark humor
completely. And that was another one of those humorous moments. Yeah. So the last thing I kind of picked up was, and it was low key, and I don't think I would have picked it up if I hadn't picked up on a particular line about Lady Ochiba saying before, like, I manipulated fate and then I scratched its eyes out. And that was a really hard-hitting line. Well, in this episode, Lady Gin points out that Toranaga wields fate like a weapon. And I was like, oh, that's a really cool pairing. Here's our two principal, protagonists. That's where all the source of the tension is between these two protagonists. I don't know, whatever they are, main characters. And so then I was thinking about them and that. And then it dawned on me that the rest of this episode is riddled with talk of fate.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got fate forced Mitsuguchi into an unwinnable war. So that's the general that 12-year-old Toranaga beat. Blackthorn is ready to meet his fate with Toranaga, and he says that in the little meeting. Obviously, Lady Gin says Toranaga, fate is like a weapon, and in the hands of somebody who knows how to wield it. Previously, Ochiba says scratches his eyes out. Nagakado's beautiful fate, beautiful, stupid fate, right? He's constantly talking about, if my death comes, that'll be fate and it'll be beautiful. Yabushige says, I'm bound to this fate when he's talking on the beach with Blackthorn.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nagakado goes out on a trick of fate, right?
Not beautiful at all.
Not beautiful at all. So riddled throughout this entire episode is this other low-key framing device, which is all these characters struggling with their fates and looking, and I think with the fog plays into some of that too, because we can't see what's coming towards us in the future. We don't know, and we just have to accept whatever fate brings us. Or can we manipulate and wield fate like a weapon?
Right. And if you wield fate, can someone just take a bite out of that weapon? Can someone destroy your weapon, take it from you?
Right. Or return it to you in a box, into a round container, like the head of these some poor guys here getting their heads chopped off. Anyway, super... just rich, just sort of in a literature sort of sense, in a literary sense, a lot of very cool stuff. I wanted to point out a few historical notes or sort of real world notes that I had picked up on during the episode and did a little I wouldn't call it a deep dive, but I did some reading on the internets to educate myself. This episode title is called Stick of Time. I was like, okay, well, obviously they give us the visual clue with the incense, right? And I was like, time
it takes to burn a stick, yeah.
But it's not just that. There were clocks, whole ass mechanical clocks that were built on the burning of incense to mark time. Absolutely incredible, rich history. Everything as simple as burning a stick of incense all the way through big machines that would have different weights and triggers that were released by things burning, and then changing the weight of something or releasing something. So you might have some sort of striker or gong thing that would then mark the hour of the day. They would calibrate the material. So they would have it, just like weights and measures, they would have a known quantity. And then they would say, well, what if we mix this sandalwood with this patchouli or whatever? I'm just picking two smells that I know I don't love. And overused sandalwood. Yeah, it is. I burned a lot of it in my 20s. So
okay. Well, my favorite, it's overused here. It's called church incense. I don't even know what it is. But
I don't know that one.
Apparently that's what Catholic churches smell like.
Okay. I can remember the smell a little bit. Anyway, they would, and it could be a stick or a powder or a little cone thing, what have you, but they would calibrate all of these. And the origins of these things are unknown, but they could go back early days of, into what is now modern China. Some people theorize they might have even come from India, but there's no hard evidence for that. So somewhere on the Eurasian continent, and then, it got picked up by the Japanese at some point. But there was a thing that, and then they would even use these to measure. So a geisha might use, it's like, I bought 3 sticks of time, or a doctor might use it to, when the incense, every third stick, take one of these, quote unquote pills.
Right.
And so it was actually widely used in sort of a daily life way. One of the interesting things that I picked up, though, that relates back to the show is, so they would do, certain incense clocks, they would take a incense powder and they would put it in a box, and like say in a where that has a covering of sand in it, and then it would be in a sort of a geometric shape or pattern, like all sort of snake lines going back and forth, and they would have little trays that they would lay down, and then that would like a form or a template that they could then fill in the incense. And then you could say, okay, this leg of it, before it makes its 290-degree turns to go back the other direction, is one flavor of incense or one smell, and that's going to take an hour to burn through. And then when it starts burning that second run, that's a different smell. And so you could tell time. Oh, it's 1 o'clock, it's 2 o'clock by the different incense smells. But in the show, during the Regents meeting, was it episode 4 or 5, where they kept when they kept bringing out, Sugiyama sends his regards, but he's not going to be here anymore, or Chiba is not going to, right? Remember that whole thing? They kept showing a box of incense.
Right.
That's an incense clock. Right. That is an absolute. That's like if you go online and search for incense clock, that's one of the designs that you will see. So but they never say anything about that in the show.
No, one thing I appreciate about the show in general is that there are a lot of things that they just let you infer, and they don't say them out loud. They really don't. They accept, I think, that people are going to have different experiences watching this, and some people are going to pick up on more layers than others, and they don't want to spell things out for you and make them too obvious. It's always subtle, and it's you pay attention to the background details, and you learn a lot more about the characters in the world.
So as podcasters, we like these kinds of shows.
Yeah, exactly. No, perfect for us.
Perfect. Absolutely. I wanted to mention the tori, which is the wooden structure, a Shinto religious gate that you go through to pray for luck and, sort of center yourself, a boundary, if you will, transition zones. And I believe Abby mentioned this, and there was somebody, right. Sherry mentioned had a question about this on the Discord. and where Toranaga was throwing the stone up to one of the levels of there. And if you look at that scene again, you'll see there's a whole bunch of stones up there already. So this is something that they do. And I have not listened to the official podcast yet for this episode.
I did. And yeah, they talk about it because apparently I think it's the actor who plays Toranaga. I'm sorry, I forget the actor's name. But he's also a producer, and it sounds like he's quite heavily involved in a lot of the creation and development of the show. And I guess he's from Hokkaido, from the north. And this is a memory of his own from childhood.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, where they would
Sanada
throw these.
The actor. Yeah.
Sorry, say it again.
Sanada.
Okay, Sanada.
Hiroki Sanada.
So Hiroki Sanada. So they would throw like the stones up there kind of to make a wish. But of course, somebody had to check, and no, it didn't land up there properly.
Right. Yeah. That was me in my second watch. I was like, oh no, but it didn't. And then I think, what did Nate say? He said it didn't land but Nagakato's head landed on a stone in reverse. So, but beautiful, right? That an actor and producer could take a personal detail, and when he did it, it felt so natural to me. Of course, you would do that. Of course, you would skip a stone or throw a penny into a fountain, or it just felt so real and very human. Oh, can I do it?
Yeah,
who did it the first time, and then look at that, or people throwing shoes up around telephone wires and electrical wires. What's that about? But people keep doing
it.
They
do that. They do it here to celebrate a child, daughter, son, whatever, passing school.
Oh, okay,
passing their exams. Yeah, and then they do it with a backpack.
A backpack. Oh, interesting. Okay. So then the utility companies has to come around on a regular basis and clean them all off at some point. Anyway, I wanted to mention something too about a second in a seppuku ceremony or incident, or whatever, when somebody's committing the ritual disembowelment. The second is a person who stands behind you and lops your head off so that you don't cry out or dishonor your own death as you're doing it. Now, as I understand it, the practice of seppuku has evolved over time. There are different periods and eras where in some cases it was a lot more private and reserved. In other, I believe in the Edo period, it was much more of a public spectacle, and everybody would gather for these things. And so practice evolved and changed over time as human cultures are wont to do.
Well, that makes sense why they that adds extra weight to him saying who chooses a child as a second, like who chooses a child to finish off the job of killing me cleanly, like God.
Exactly. And that was something that I believe the Japanese word is kaishukunin. I'm see if I can get the syllables right. But it basically means second. They had to, and then there was a whole thing of, is it a fellow samurai or a friend who does it? Kind of like, like, is it your buddy or is it a stranger or what kind of thing? But you had to be careful if too many people chose you, and maybe you were really good at it, and so then you're the guy that everybody asked because you're really good, or you botched it, and now your reputation's bad. And nobody wants to hang out and drink with you anymore because oh man, it took you 3 strokes to do your job. So a samurai, especially. They had to be careful about their reputations with it, and slightly skip ahead 10 seconds if you don't want to hear this, but a slightly gruesome detail is that they would not try to cleanly. It wasn't a clean, because if you did, then the head could potentially fly off, and roll around, and go somewhere unexpected, and that could be more embarrassing and awkward, indignant, exactly. And everybody's running around chasing this head that's rolling around all over the place. So they would try to cut a clean cut through, but to leave, skip ahead now, leave some on so that it stayed attached to the body and didn't roll. And so that takes a lot of skill. right? In terms of distance and how close or far you are, and actually being able to have a stroke that cuts through end to end. So, well, a lot more than I ever realized that I would understand about seppuku. So
no, I mean, it's good they finally addressed it to a certain, but they didn't. It really is not that gory of a show in the end, because there's, we talk about the Pukila scale, and I'm sure that Marilyn would not want to, have the talk about the bloody mess at the end, but they don't show it, and they don't at the beginning, the way they did the seppuku at the opening scene was very tasteful. A lot of cutaways and just suggestion and splatters of blood.
But then there'll be an episode, was it 4 or 5, where they're picking up the post-canon, cleanup. Or even with Michiguchi, the character who does it, they show there's in the bottom corner of the frame, there's some innards that you can see just for a second.
It's very, maybe, of course, my scale is skewed. My current obsession is Monkey Man. But it's very tasteful the way they do it in this show.
And it's enough for you to get the visceral sense without being gratuitous or over the top, right? I think it serves the story. The last little historical note that I wanted to mention, and I'm certainly no geography expert in the islands and lands of Japan, but I picked up on a couple of things what Sakei had said, and I got a little confused, and so I did some Google mapping at whatnot. So when he's there, when Toranaga and his half brother are meeting, he says, "Samurai of the Kanto, my soldiers are excited to shed blood with you." Well, Kanto is a region on the island of Honshu, which is the big island of Japan, and it's the region that what modern Tokyo is in. And it's, I guess you could refer to it like a state, like a state in America, or
a province.
Province. A province, I believe, is smaller than a region. Okay. I could be wrong about that. So anyway, it's Greater Tokyo area. And then later, he talks at the dinner about Izu province, and and Yabushige did not like that conversation. He was like, "What? Like, you want to take my province?"
Right, of course.
So Ajiro, the village, is in Izu province, which is not in the Kanto region. Kanto region, I believe, because the O has the flat line over the top. Kanto region. It's just to the south. So as you come out of Tokyo Bay, there's a little peninsula that is in the Izu province, and then Ajiro is supposed to be there. Okay. And so Edo, Edo?
It's Edo, yeah.
Yeah, Edo. Where Toranaga's stronghold is, where he's at, is in the Kanto region. So maybe he's saying because it's Toranaga's dudes who've come from the Kanto region, even though they're in Izu province. Okay, so that makes sense now. I think I've answered my own question, because I got confused. Like, why is he saying to the soldiers in Ajiro, oh, you're Kanto? Oh no, but it makes sense now because they came from up there. Anyway, so if you look on a map where the center of modern Tokyo is, Edo is just to the north a little bit, roughly, of what is modern Tokyo. So that's where Toranaga's people are, and then Ajiro.
Isn't Edo just what evolved into modern Tokyo? I went to the Edo Museum at Tokyo. Okay.
I didn't get into that aspect of it. I was just looking purely at geography. So I think Edo probably... modern Tokyo encompasses what was Edo.
Yeah, modern Tokyo encompasses a lot. It's insane.
Exactly. So, but if you look at Tokyo and then you just look to the south, follow the coastline south a little bit, you'll see a little peninsula that pops out, and that's where Ajiro is. And then Osaka is down to the south further along the coast in an inlet bay. So it all makes geographically, I think they're playing straight with everything here. But I did look up hot springs in Izu province, and it's a thing. That's actually a thing. They're known for, and you can go on to TripAdvisor and find the 10 best hot springs in Izu province. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always wanted to go back to Japan in the in the winter, because then in the hot springs in the mountains, the snow monkeys come and bathe with you.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool. I lived in Budapest for a number of years and enjoyed the hot springs there. Yeah. All the baths around there. So very cool. I feel like Japanese television and cinema is having a really big moment right now. I keep hearing Tokyo Vice season 2 is really good.
Okay.
I checked out after episode 1 because it just felt like a rehash of season 1, which was fine. It didn't make my top 10. But I enjoyed watching it. But then I was like, I don't want to watch that same thing again. But then everybody's low-key talking about the fact that it's super good.
Really? Okay. It's not usually my genre, but of course as someone who loves especially, horror and art house films and stuff, Japan's always been one of the tops of the cinema for me.
Right. And then, of course, we have Godzilla -1 and Blue-Eyed Samurai. It just feels like there's a lot happening, a lot coming from Japan these days.
And have to plug as many times as possible. See the new Japanese movie Monster. It's a good Rashomon story about kids and the nature of bullying, and
that's right.
It'll surprise you.
Right. Did it get nominated for an Oscar last year?
No, it didn't. It didn't actually. It could have. Japan submitted instead Perfect Days, so it wasn't eligible for any other award.
I watched that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, you did? What'd you think?
Yeah, it was great. It was a great palate cleanser after all of the big movies. Yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was so interesting, and the way that they developed the tension ultimately in it, where, I won't say anything, but like it's not just a series of vignettes, but it really is there is a story within there,
right? Mm-hmm.
But then to think that he just did this all guerrilla style.
Mm-hmm.
That it wasn't, big, we're going to block off a neighborhood and, have
Vim vendors. Yeah.
And, there's shots of the little van driving on the highway, and like, how did they, and at a particular time with a particular light, it's as a craft of filmmaking, the light and the whole thing with his photography and looking in the light and all that kind of stuff. Beautiful. Absolutely a stunning film.
I want to think of moments, like, I won't spoil anything, but the moment where someone tells him the saddest thing, and then he just he responds by let's play.
Right. Yeah. Really beautiful. Good stuff. Anyway, we're not here to talk about
Japanese cinema top.
Go for it. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll get into our conversations around plot and character. And we are back. Okay, so let's start talking about some of the plot and character moments that are going on in the show. And I thought we might want to start first really quick touching on Crimson Sky, since it's kind of it's a character in a sense that everybody's got to deal with it. But it's not embodied in a person. So what are your current thoughts on the Crimson Sky plan? Is it a good plan, not plan? Is there more to the plan that we're unaware of? Is there a secret alliance?
I'm not going to pretend. Yeah, well, that's the question, is is anyone in on the secret alliance? But I'm not going to pretend to be able to predict what Crimson Sky. We got some description of it, but I'm pretty sure that they're going to surprise us, and I am going to let myself be surprised. My only question is,
agreed.
How is that not the very next thing that happens? How do we have what's going to happen next episode?
Right, and that's it. Yeah, I cannot predict. Yeah, the future is. I don't have Muad'Dib's prescience, so I can't tell the future here. I was wondering. Okay, so in the world of just, having fun with ideas and not actually being attached to this necessarily, I heard, I think it was on Midnight Boys, maybe they were theorizing that maybe they were playing out the theater, right? We've talked about theater before and political theater in this series. Maybe Toranaga and his brother are doing some political theater there in front of everybody, so they really believe the fiction. and then he goes to Osaka under guard. But that's the opportunity for him to get into the city walls, because just trying to assault the city walls straight
Trojan horse
exactly, Trojan horse. And then they somehow turn the tables, and then Sakai says, "Okay, everybody, put on your red armbands and start attacking Ishido's forces." And they're like, everybody's like, "What? Oh, whatever. Our Lord says do this, so we do this." So, go ahead.
I mean, the question is, I don't want to admit that, like, Nobutaku, I'm going to get his name right.
Nobukatu. Katu, yep.
Isn't it? Okay.
Yeah, it's spelled that way.
Nobutatsu.
Oh, the brother. Sorry, the brother.
Yeah, the brother. Sorry, yeah. Apologies. We are. What did you say? Like, spoiler alerts, American stalking.
Very good.
But I don't want to believe that he is all bad. Probably because they made him charming. But I don't know, what if he is working with them? And also then I have questions on, could Buntaro be working the other way? I brought that up. And
right, yeah, the secret, he could be a secret Ishido plant.
Yeah, are there secret alliances going on? I don't know.
The one that we can say that we know is a secret spy is Muraji, aka Tonomoto Akinao, who is the sort of nominal headman of the village and Toranaga's spy who has the pigeon network. And he says, Toranaga says to him, "Oh, you're, my secret agent here, my prized samurai." And they show a scene when his brother comes through, Nobutatsu comes walking in for the dinner, and he's walking through town, and everybody in the village is like, "Oh, okay, we gotta bow to the guy." And they show Muraji there intentionally, right? They show his face for a second, and then they show him bowing with everybody else in the village. And so it was like, oh, they're seeding us. They're visually seeding us with something there.
Yeah.
So we'll see how
I think
we're
definitely going to see him come back and play a role in the final game.
I really hope that episode, what is episode, are we reading it wrong? Is episode 9 Crimson Sky? If you follow the penultimate structure, episode, the one before the end is the climax, right? If you follow a standard literary thing, and then you have the denouement afterwards. If we're following that, is Crimson Sky the assault and the attack? What's episode 8 called? It's curious. We could read the leaves here a little bit. But is Crimson Sky the aftermath of Crimson Sky, or is it the actual assault's Crimson Sky? And they're doing something in the castle. I really do wonder what. I'm checking the show tracker. I've got it here. Do you have it? I found it. It's the Abyss of Life. That's like a really terribly depressing sounding.
But I did think that chapter 10 is a dream of a dream. That's the denouement. And Crimson Sky chapter 9, that makes sense. The Abyss of Life. Oh man. They're like, you like your darkness with a little topping of extra darkness.
That's right.
Sprinkled on top.
And I guess Crimson Sky is partially written by Rachel Kondo, who is one of the showrunners. And so she's got her name to one of the big episodes. So let's I guess we could, if we wanted to be that way, if we didn't want to just be totally in the fog, we could maybe assume that Crimson Sky is going to be packed with drama. And if 8 is the Abyss of Life, then we have that low point before we climb up and our.
Yeah. Well, I guess they have to give a beat to mourn to
Nobukatsu.
mourn Nobukatsu and like figure out how they're going to play that death, because there are several political ways since this horrible thing happened. they can maneuver it in certain ways because the last thing we saw was him getting handed or trying to be handed a sort of a
death warrant.
Yeah, death warrant.
Yeah.
And that was, in the last act that his father did was kind of showing his love as much as probably Toranaga ever does, where he's like, don't you dare take that.
Right. That's a really good point. Well, let's just keep talking about Nagakado. Sorry. This is an early morning recording too. We're trying to fit this in and I'm still drinking coffee. So let's just keep talking about him. I had him on the end of our list, but let's just pick it up from here. I think that's really interesting. And something that occurred to me before too is how good a father is Toranaga. Because it's not like he's taking Nagakado by the scruff of the neck and saying, listen, son, I need you to shut up and just pay attention to what I'm doing. I can't tell you everything because I don't want to spoil the plans, but stay with me, follow in my footsteps, don't do anything. Like even just telling him, okay, you did the canon thing that really screwed up my plans. Don't do it again. Because there's stuff going on, and I just or just saying even to him there's stuff going on. Is he too much of a kid who's looking for his father's attention? Is he going to spill the beans to Omi or somebody else unintentionally? Is he just that clueless?
Yeah, I guess he should always assume there's stuff going on.
Mm-hmm. That's a good default operating position, right? When you're with Toranaga.
And that's sort of where, Toranaga was exasperated with him, just when are you going to mature?
And see that and actually start to pick up what I'm putting down.
But the thing is, so Toranaga, and I don't know that I think this was double-sided, but he did end up praising the act of forcing, as he said, forcing the others to come out of Osaka and attack them.
Right. That's a good point. So he's a master at turning circumstance to his advantage.
Right, exactly. Which is why I think we're going to see something like that at the beginning of the next episode with his son's death. Right.
Okay. They set up the whole robe thing as this trick of fate really well. And if you go back and look at the scene when Sakai is at the hot springs, he's got that big white. Is that the shorter gray robe? There's another scene where he's got the big long white robe on. So they visually give it to us earlier on in the show, and then after Kiku leaves, he puts it on, and they show it intentionally that it's dragging behind his feet. So they set us up for the fact that when it's draped, and he didn't slip on a rock. He slipped on a rock that had the robe over the top of it. So the rock itself, that's what Nagakado didn't see, was that small little detail, which I think goes to his character, part of his character flaw. He's not paying attention to detail. He's so in the moment, and the look on his face, the actor just plays it brilliantly. Yeah. He's like, you could feel his heart pounding in his chest, and he's like, oh my God, I'm actually going to do it. And then he slips.
Yeah.
But that robe is all set up as all the way through the scene. So really, really clever filmmaking, right?
Yeah. It feels inevitable, but then also a surprise, which is a tricky thing to pull off.
Totally. Completely threw me. Let's roll into Toranaga now, since we're sort of talking about that. What do you think about
and by the way, I just want to point out about Nagakado's death is that apparently this did not happen in the book. I don't know what did happen in the book, but I hope someone please let us know that we can talk about it after the finale. But
yeah, right, in the season wrap up.
Yeah, but it just makes me so curious now. Like, oh, that's a huge departure if he didn't die in the book.
For sure, for real. Yeah. And good time to seed this. We'll talk about it more at the end and in the next couple of podcasts. We are going to do a season wrap up. Our intention is for you, me, and John to cover it. So get your thoughts and comments and reactions into us by email, shogun@thelorehounds.com. That's really the best way because we can, formulate it. We can go to the Discord and take stuff, but it's kind of a little different workflow. Or drop us a voicemail. Definitely do either of those. And then I think our intention is to have Nate, our resident historian, on the podcast as well. So we might do something where the three of us talk, and then we'll bring Nate on for some sort of interview style conversation as well. Nate, if you're listening, I know you're ready, but just to let you know that's going to happen. All right. So what do we think about Toranaga in this episode? One of the thoughts that I had was that it was interesting to see They keep building him up as this grand master, and he's great at theater. But in the end of the day, he's a real human being who's getting angry at things, who's sort of dealing with the fact of his legend. He's a legendary figure, but the truth is that it took him, he was 12 years old and he had to butcher another man that he beat in battle. And so he's mad at Mariko. There's a lot. He's actually a really complex character. He's not a flat legendary character.
Yeah, no, and that's something that they've done with all the characters in this show. But he's the hero of the show, I suppose, or him or John Blackthorne, and especially him. It's sometimes you're like, wait, who am I rooting for? Like this is, Japanese Machiavelli. Like.
I think the lesson too that he learned from his 12-year-old self is that general warfare, all-out war, not necessarily conflict or palace intrigue or minor skirmishes or battles, but warfare is not a good thing. Right. And I think that's, they kept flashing, they kept going to the flashback and showing this 12-year-old who's just got to be, okay, so violence and this kind of life and death stuff is normalized in this society, but what does it do to the base level human psychology to see that kind of horror or to inflict that kind of pain and suffering on others?
Right. Absolutely. Like, I mean, I think, they played it for laughs, the whole second thing and him watching the beheading, but something like that is going to stick with you. That same story has been told in other settings as, a formative horror event for a child.
Right. And I flash back over to Ahsoka and into the Star Wars universe. And then, minor spoilers for the season 1 of Ahsoka, but we get some flashback stuff with her, and we really realize she was a child soldier.
Right.
She was indoctrinated, and she was an agent of death and destruction, nominally for the good guys. Sure, carry the good guy banner. It's and you can debate just war, like that's a whole philosophical and moral debate. But yeah, she was a soldier who. Well,
this is why because it was uncanny seeing someone who looked 14, as she was supposed to be at the time, pretty much, and seeing them in this position. But this is why so many shows like Game of Thrones adaptations, apparently they're doing this with Silo next season. They age up the kids.
Okay, right.
Which, there's also, of course, older
Sansa, you were just on sorry to interrupt you, but you were just on Electric Boogaloo with Anthony talking about Sansa. Great episode, by the way. It was awesome. I loved your insights on it. If you haven't listened to that, go check it out. But exactly, right? They aged her up as an actor.
Right, because this stuff that's happening to her at age 12 is horrifying.
Right.
It's
and
bad
to see
enough
a real 12-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right? We can't handle it.
Yeah, it'd be a shock to the
conscience. Can't handle the truth. Yeah.
No. Well played. And I love how they introduced 12-year-old Toranaga in this, where and again, there's a fog of war, right? We have a bloody, foggy battlefield, and then we zoom up to this silhouetted figure on a horse, and then the head turns, and holy crap, it's a kid.
Right.
You're like, wait, that's not the Toranaga that we know. And then, of course, then the title card comes, and it's. I think it's designed intentionally for us to recognize. But I think the lesson he learns is that warfare is bad. And so he's trying everything he can do
to avoid it.
Exactly. Which, to bring in another story comp here, sorry to do this, everybody, but Dune, Muad'Dib, Paul, he's trying to avoid being a galactic, and being the instigator of a galactic holy war. That is going to spread death and destruction across the universe, even though he has prescience, so he sees further down the long line anyway, but he still fights it in the moment.
Right.
And so it's interesting the fact that those who have been in war understand the cost of it, both on an individual scale, or Toranaga can see a bigger picture, and so he's trying to avoid it, and he's trying to find the path, which is why I think Crimson Sky is a good idea, because it's the least amount of death and destruction.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, if you ask me, the mark of good leadership is trying to avoid war as much as possible, because the whole flashback thing, and them, showing, he's like, looking up into the sky and scratching his chin and contemplating, and then we get a little flashback or whatever. I kept waiting for him to have, like, another show would have shown us a scene from that moment that then gives him the insight, and now he has the plan, and we're in on the fact that he has the plan, and here we go. But they just kept leaving me in a quandary. I was like, wait, where's the answer of the flashback? What's the answer to get out of I think
trap?
We're not going to get it until episode 9.
Exactly. I think you're right. The land grant to Lady Gin. Was I was like,
I do think that, she convinced him of that. That was sort of an afterthought. And is this the first time? Because we keep seeing, what's his face?
Yabushige
with his will. Is this the first time we've seen Toranaga do his? Yeah.
100%. Which is, they play for a comic event. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it adds extra gravity to the situation. Like, this is, Yabushige, whatever, he's doing his will. It must be Tuesday, but
exactly.
But Toranaga's doing his will. You're like, oh shit, he's worried. In
the open, not like, okay, come with me, Mariko, and we're gonna. Like,
maybe that's a good point. In the open,
right? And it's political theater. Political theater. Very interesting. But then I go back and I think how frustrated is he, and how much can he rely on his clan and his allies in his grouping, because there's a lot of dissension among the ranks. I mean, Buntaro, one of his most formidable leaders, is head and heart are all twisted up with Mariko and Blackthorn. And Yabushige is constantly trying to undermine him and screw around. Hiromatsu is competent, but he's only got so much gas left in his tank, right? I mean, it's not 20, he's 60 or however old. Even though he's formidable, he's still not a young man who can withstand the rigors. So I just wonder how. And then he's got Blackthorn with his cannons and his ship. But he's a wild card as well. So does he really have a strong enough hand to have? And then he just lost a huge chunk of his army. So does he really have all the cards in his hands to be able to play out a strategy that he ideally would? So when he walks out from the conversation with Mariko, and he looks up into the sky, into the rain, he's pissed. He's angry. He's frustrated. He's feeling, and like he said before, that the horses or animals are in the Broken to the Fist episode. He's frustrated because they'll always betray you, right?
I mean, I think that, but I don't think that he's given up. I don't think he knows how to give up. Not least because he knows that if he goes down, all these other people are going down with him. So he's not only ending his own life, he's ending, well, his son's taking care of that part, but he's ending Mariko's life. He's ending John Blackthorn's life. Everyone Buntaro, is going down.
Yeah. Hiromatsu. Yeah. And And he even says to Mariko later, like, are you with me in your father's ultimate what his fight
I love
was.
how he politically frames that. Are you with me? And this fight's not about me. It's what your father wanted. It was his dying wish.
Political legacy. Which, man, that really makes me think of Star Wars too. The political legacy of Darth Vader and the Jedi and Luke and everything like that with the Skywalker saga.
I mean, yeah, if Anakin had a calmer temper, he could have been Toranaga. Toranaga would have taken out the Emperor and been Emperor himself.
Good comp. One last little detail with Hiramatsu. There is so when Toranaga is doing the seconding, there is a shot of an older gentleman standing behind him. I'm pretty sure that's Hiramatsu, and he even says, "Well, you were there," and so that right.
Mm-hmm.
But they go to the detail of even showing. So Hiramatsu in the concurrent timeline has a scar on his face. And if you look back on that scene of the flashback, he has a wound on his face in the same place. So they never talk about it, and they never talk about that wound. But yet it's a great little visual tie back between the two. And it may be in that battle was where he got that scar. And so it's just lovely attention to detail. Mm-hmm. So the statue, the figures aren't 2-dimensional, but they're 3-dimensional. And if you walk around them, I remember when I first went to France, I was like, oh my God, like all these statues are 3-dimensional. You'll never see the back of it in the opera house. You'll never see the back of the figure up there, but it's 3-dimensional. They actually completed the detail of it back behind there.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing in this show. So let's talk about Sake Nobutatsu, the half-brother of Toranaga.
The new love of my Shogun life.
What did you make of the delivery of the acting of how this character was portrayed? Because he had a very different style of speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's why I said no one's allowed to have fun, which is why as soon as I was like, oh, this character, I like him, he's got to be a bad guy.
Right.
But I appreciate them throwing a different personality into the mix. As you said, he's being dropped in episode 7 of a 10-episode series. So he better have charisma out the wazoo to, make this character make an impact at this point. And that was definitely successful in both acting, directing, costuming,
the hat. Writing. I can't get over the hat.
Yeah.
That thing was ginormous. Is it heavy? Is it like tin? Is it like flattened tin or something?
I think that was one of the things that Nate commented on in the feedback. Where it comes from, what it's an ode to. Oh,
okay. Very cool. Yeah. We'll talk about then. And all his dudes they all got the same drip and the look, and it's right. Tight.
Yeah.
That silver color is really, it stands out. It's nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's complex. And I think, I liked him when he first showed up, and then the betrayal happened. I was like, oh man, I knew this was going to happen. But then he wins me back in the last second because he looks down at his nephew who was trying to kill him, or whether he would have gone, whether he would have gone through with it. Yeah. And he just says, what a waste, and you can feel, he genuinely feels like this is not how you should have gone out, kid.
Right. And if and whether it was whether this whole thing is theater or if he really did, whether that death warrant, I think the death warrant is real.
Mm-hmm.
And then whether it was like we were never going to let that happen,
right,
doesn't matter. But yeah.
They figured that he would be smart enough to just not take it, and then when he reached for it, Daddy was like, "Come on, kid."
Right. And would we let you actually? I wouldn't let that actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
I may not have a high estimation of you, but I'm not gonna. Yeah.
I don't know, but that's rich after what they did to our girl Fuji.
Yeah, that's true. The meeting on the road really made me nervous because none of Toranaga's people were wearing armor. But then if you show up in armor, then like that's sending a signal to them. And of course, they got to be wearing their armor because they're marching in to come to war. So it felt very out of balance, the balance of power between the two. And so I think right from that moment, the dramatic tension between the brothers was there for me. And then when he tells the story of him humiliating himself, the punchline was funny. It was like, I don't care about you. I cared about the horse. I felt really bad for that horse that had to ride back with you. But the humiliation, telling that humiliating story just before he delivers the regions, before he exposes the plot, I thought was really brilliant as well. Like, I'm going to make, and he knows everybody's dead silent, and he knows that that they're all uncomfortable and not dealing with it. And then boom, he lays out the trap, as it were, or whatever it is.
Yeah, I do have to. It was a bit like Hollywood timing with the way that at just the right moment in the conversation, somehow the troops outside knew that this was the moment.
Right. And the whole army showing up on the the cliff line and stuff, for sure. But then I thought that was weird. So this was a really weird line to me when Toranaga says, oh, okay, well, tomorrow we're going to talk about our alliance. Like, wait, why are you bringing this up in the middle of dinner? We know that you're going to talk about it tomorrow. So why are you triggering this opportunity for him to bring up the fact that he's now a regent? It didn't make sense to me. And it gives me more pause about what Toranaga really has up his sleeve. Like, was this the cue? He's like, okay, so when I say to you, we'll talk about it tomorrow, that's when you do blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And that's when your guy.
And are they watching the sticks of incense to time that?
Ooh, good one. I like that. That could be, right? That could totally be.
Or we're just like clawing at hope.
Yeah, we could be looking for Markleys here. We could be hunting Markleys in the shadows. All right, Lady Gin. What a badass.
Yeah.
What did you think of her whole
I think she shot her shot and she made a good case, and I'm really glad. I did feel like when Toranaga was doing his will, it did feel like he was like, you know what? Let's just give that to her. That's the least I can do. And it shows also that Toranaga does have somewhere in him. He has empathy, and he has he does see himself as a protector of people.
Right. Ultimately. Yeah. And she made a good case. And then the fact that she could see the potential of like, well, you have scouts, your army's decimated, but you should have some spies. You're a master of spies. We know that. You should have, militarily speaking, you should have scouts out. So you should know the army's coming. And all, like, when she starts to lay out all that stuff, she sees, is she really seeing the truth, or is this a story? The legend of Toranaga, the strategist, and she's poking holes in all of this stuff. Right. Which I think endures him. Curries his favor, so that, when he does do his will, he's like, I'm happy to give her this land. So, yeah. So when Omi shows up outside of the Willow Tea House, she was there waiting for him. Did she have people on the road sort of spying, or like she was there ready to block him from coming in? So I thought that was curious. I don't know that it'll.
I'm sure that
anything.
I'm sure she has spies, a network of spies. I would expect to know less.
Right. For a woman like Gin, for sure. And then she totally stirs the pot. Right. She's like, oh, well, where was, he didn't really seem very attentive to Kiku that night.
Yeah. Yeah. She's like, I would never, what happens in the Willow World stays in the Willow World, except,
gosh, yeah.
I'm going to drop this hot gossip.
So is she just stirring the pot just because he's the barbarian, or is she just stirring the pot to stir the pot? I don't know what her.
Yeah, I mean, I think she and Toranaga, that's one thing that we see in the scene between them this week, is that they are matched in terms of scheming. That there's layers within layers, and
right, plans within plans,
setting up contingencies in case plans A and B fall through.
Another great Dune comp, right? Plans within plans. That's a line that Herbert uses repeatedly. I did think it was interesting. Poor Omi is just getting You can't win for trying.
Mm.
Kiku is sorry, did I say Kiku? Yeah, Kiku, that's right. I have Kiki in my notes for some reason. Spelling error. Kiku is getting to be her status is rising far above what Omi's. He doesn't have the status to have an exclusive relationship with her in a Willow World sort of sense. He's too small now. Gin has plans for Kiku that do not include Omi, I guess we could say.
Right. And yeah, I would say that was always going to be the case. But poor. I knew this first moment I saw them together. I'm like, yeah, she's going to be moving up in the world and leaving you behind.
And he has that line, "I love you," right, as they're in an intimate moment, and you're just like, oh, dude. You do not fall in love with a sex worker because it's not gonna end well for you.
I mean, I guess in another case, maybe it could have been, but she is a shrewd woman, and I think that we got a little more insight into Gin's upbringing in this episode, but you just know from the stories throughout history, or even in fiction like Game of Thrones, that the women who are put in this position, they have chosen this life, or some sold into it often, out of practicality. And it's very difficult to break through that, I'm going to carve out a place in the world where I can be free to do what I want, rather than I'm going to fall in love with a man and be subjected to his will.
Sounds like a plot of a movie that was nominated for a few Oscars. Yeah, very, very much so. Dealing with how a woman's sexuality is commoditized in that world, and in certainly in our Western world, and or there it's normalized. Well, whereas in a lot of Western European cultures, but in some we have pockets of normalization, and others it's not. It's a messy thing. But at least in Japan at this time, it was structured. I was talking with Nate and Abby on the Discord because Lady Gin says, I was raised ukareme, I believe is the word, which I was trying to get a read on. Is it an anachronistic term for prostitute or sex worker? And sort of the answer that we get is, yeah, it's an older phrasing. It's also kind of a good time girl, so they could play music. They could do a little of this or do a little of that.
Well, I mean, you have to think that
as opposed to a geisha, which is actually an elevated.
Well, but geishas also, I think the geishas just come later, and geisha, by the way, is only linked to Tokyo, previously Edo, and like for instance in Kyoto they're called gaiku, if I remember correctly. Okay, but they did actually perform, like they would perform music, or I was told that a lot of the time the men who came to see them would just want to spend most of the time playing games, like this sort of peekaboo kind of game, and this like rock paper scissors kind of game where it's like, was it Grandmother Tiger? Anyway, it doesn't matter. But it would be a place where they can just come out from behind the eightfold fence, I guess, and just be childish and just let loose. And it often wasn't even fully about sex.
Right. And I think there's in Western traditions, there's an idea too of a more sophisticated in terms of the nuance and the level of things that are going on, where there is a psychological play that's going on, and it's the psychology and the intellectual stimulation that is contractually being delivered as much as it is a physical, and the physical may be an afterthought or a secondary thing. So yeah, geishas were trained in art and philosophy and history and literature, and so you could have conversations and
but sometimes they just play peekaboo. It's just what they wanted.
Which is interesting, because if you're a big daimyo or a general or something like that, and you're constantly making decisions for people, and then you can just take off your armor and then let go, and then you swing back, psychologically speaking, you go from one extreme to another. very dysregulated spaces, right? And
well, yeah. Now I think probably the most common clients that Geisha Geiko have are businessmen,
right,
who have the suit of armor, different sort of suit of armor.
Exactly. Let's talk really quick about Kiku since we're there. How did she know to get the F out? She said, let me go elevate
she was
our
in
play.
on something. Yeah.
And I was like, I was trying, I just posited the theory, like, well, was it a accident? Was it a trick of fate that she said in that moment, I'll go, and that's just when Nagakado and his crew roll in. So it's like, and then they sort of say, hey, run away. Or did she go open the gate and let him in? Because timing wise, how does that work? Was she the one?
Yeah. Well, at the very least, she knew that she needed to make herself scarce at that moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. She could have, opened a door and said, now's the moment.
Because she's very like, I can go get some other stuff. And we've seen her.
Well, I guess that was elevating the play. She was like, he thought she was going to come back with sex toys. And she was like, here's men with swords.
Yeah, exactly. Because we've seen her before where she's stirred the pot a little bit, or where she's listening very intently into conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't wonder, like, was that why Omi was at the Willow World to, like, make plans with her? Because Nagakado and Omi are trying to make Anjiro great again. When they're having their conversation in the hot bath, like, oh, it's so, gosh, I wish we could go back to the way it was,
Right.
And so was this a plan that they all hatched together? And then he's like,
I don't think Omi was in on it.
You don't think so? Okay.
No, I think he just once, he's like, I used to be a big fish in a small pond, and now the pond is getting bigger and I'm getting smaller. Yeah.
And I keep getting upstaged by this barbarian who
of all people.
who can't even use chopsticks, right?
I mean, I'm waiting for the Omi Buntaro team up to take down Blackthorn.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And there's a couple of shots where they show both of them sitting side by side just going, oh, dude. Yeah. Shaking their heads. Before we swing around to the Buntaro, Blackthorn, Mariko, a three-way, love triangle, I guess we could say. Let's just touch on Fuji really quick. Yes, Fuji, we need you to live because we need your reaction gifts.
Yeah, exactly.
Do not die.
Yeah, no, Fuji, if one character survives this whole thing, I want it to be Fuji.
Right, exactly. So she was out there training. She was like, we got to go to war, after Hiromatsu talks to her, she picks up a sword the big spear, which I forget the name of.
The Ninganata?
Yeah, Ninganata. Anyway, you look it up. I'll keep talking here. She makes a comment to Hiromatsu. Naginata, thank you. Perfect. The Naginata looks heavy. It does not look like a light weapon. Right. And I think that probably adds some tactical advantages in a fight as well. I
mean, less heavy than a sword, but yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, if you clock somebody with the butt end of that thing, it's probably got
sure. I mean, well, that's the thing is and it's a great weapon for smaller people like women, right? Because you can hold people at a distance if you know how to wield it well. You don't let them get close enough to hurt you.
Right. And then you can use it either with the spear end or the butt end.
Exactly.
So you can wheel it.
And you can sweep their feet and you can. Yeah.
Right. Nice. There was this comment that she makes to here. Oh, and God, I'm going to get to the Hiromatsu comment here in a second. But then when she gets the boxes, my heart just broke. I was like, no, Fuji, don't be sad.
Yeah.
I took a picture of her face and posted it on the Discord because it's just so like, oh no, my child, my husband.
Yeah.
It was rough. Don't be sad.
I just can't believe that they, it's like I said, it's rich that they wanted to get Nagakado out of this after forcing her baby to go through with this. Yeah.
Right. Oh, and something I forgot too was that with Nagakado, I think the moment of the inciting moment is actually in this scene where she's doing some practice fighting. Nagakado says to her, it should have been me who stood up for my father, not your husband. And I think that's a moment where we can point to, maybe the plan was already formulated, but that's a decisive moment in his character when we can say Nagakado was spurred into action. He had a reflection. He's like, oh, that was messed up. I really should be the one who's defending my father's honor. And so he does by attempting to murder his uncle. But it was that reflection of thinking about what's her husband's name? I have it here on the show guide. Where'd it go? Oh, it got deleted. His name accidentally got deleted. Tadayoshi. There it is.
He got deleted.
Literally. There we go. Tadayoshi. I put it back in the character guide. So there's a moment. Anyway, back to the Hiramatsu thing. She says to him, what is victory? And that really struck me because in a feudal society where everybody's trying to usurp everybody else all the time, what even is victory in this moment? You know, Hiramatsu says, right, yeah, we're going to be victorious against our enemies. And she's like, really? Really? What is victory?
Even if you win and become the one who rules them all, then how long does that last?
Exactly. And the women are just we're going to be here again with our dead husbands and dead children. Right? Because they're all going to go off to war, and be you common or be you noble, it doesn't matter. They're going to get conscripted, or even if you're not conscripted, but you get invaded. I mean, we look at the death and destruction that's wrought in the War of the Kings in Game of Thrones, right? They ravage the countryside. To deny resources to their enemies.
That's one thing that I miss from the books being translated to the screen, because they really let you in the books have more time in the countryside where you really see, like, you've been seeing it all from the perspective of the lords and the people who are fighting for the throne, and then you see how the people on the street are actually affected by all this noble squabbling. And that's something that I did hope we would see in Shogun. I don't think they're going to have time to do it, but I do wonder. I want to see what the Japanese countryside looks like at this point. How are they faring with all this?
Because even in the whole Song of Ice and Fire series, there's a whole sections where, like, Arya and the escapees, for the wall from that were going in the cart up to the wall, where they're traversing the landscape, and it's death and destruction and ruin everywhere. Or the other guys, or the knights, the lady Catelyn,
and the small towns people who become bandits because they don't know how else to survive in this climate.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to the point of Toranaga going, yo, dudes, all out general warfare, not great. Not great. Not a good thing for.
Well, that's
for
also with spoiler, not really a spoiler. That's kind of something that the Wheel of Time really drives home in the books too.
Interesting. Okay. Very cool. Let's think about Mariko, Buntaro, and Blackthorn. This whole thing with, I have to give it up for the actor who's playing Buntaro. I remember Michael, aka Dork the Ninja, sent us in a voicemail very early on saying, man, that Buntaro dude, he's bad news. And he's still bad news, but they have changed my perception of him and the actor who's playing him. It's like, yeah, I don't want you to kill Blackthorn. I don't want you to be a jerk. I don't want you to abuse your wife. Like, that is, none of that is great. But they're really playing a very human character. He's not, I don't feel him being two-dimensional. I feel very three-dimensional. And I think it's really up to the actor who's been playing that, and the subtle facial expressions and the twitches and the controlled anger in his voice.
Yeah, I think the acting is just, even the most minor parts, which, Buntaro is not a minor part, but I'm saying even if you just look at the background actors, it's, that the directing is really on point when every single character feels real, and with all of the subtle details that make a person uniquely a person.
Right. And we can not agree with Buntaro's motivations, but we can understand the emotion that's driving him.
And the micro expressions in this show are off the charts.
The charts. There's a couple times where Buntaro's his eye twitches just like on his cheekbone level. I'm like, as an actor,
how do you do that?
Seriously. So good. So good. And is that a natural reaction? Because he's just, he's just juiced himself with anger?
He's like clenching his jaws. And
amazing. So he can't take Blackthorn's head without accusing his wife of adultery or soliciting the affections of Blackthorn.
Once again, Toranaga is like swinging into play to protect, to protect Blackthorn, but I feel like he does also do the same moves to protect Mariko, because he also obviously knew that Buntaro was not going to go for that.
Right. But then at a bigger strategic level, he's got to keep Buntaro, because that's the dude who took 20 days. He escaped a sheer, absolute death on the docks as they were sailing away and got back. He's like the stray dog that got lost on the family vacation and made it back 300 miles to home. Dude's a badass.
Yeah.
And you're about to go into a really dicey situation. He needs Buntaro. He absolutely needs him as a one of his men-at-arms.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Buntaro has shown that he is not the strategist, but he is a
fighter.
Yeah. He's an excellent warrior.
Even drunk. He can be 3 bottles of sake and hit an arrow on an arrow. But I love the sort of King Solomon sort of nature of the thing. Well, you split the baby. What are we going to do here? How does this end? Brilliant question as a leader. Okay, you're bringing a problem. I'll help you see the problem, but you're the one who has to affect the solution. So you tell me how this is going to end. How are we going to work this out? It's not for me to decide. It's for you to decide. Brilliant leadership. Mariko. Or should we talk about Blackthorn? I don't know. Either one.
They are always together. Right. But it is literally her job. So
it is. I like the line is like, servicing Blackthorn. No, he's servicing our Lord.
Right.
That was a really good retort. We got to remember where this is at. And I think this goes into the Mariko conversation with me, because she says to him, I serve you utterly, I believe was the line. And I think for me, the way I was reading the situation was the reason Toranaga gets pissed is because that's not a true statement from Mariko. She's not serving him utterly.
Right. He's like, don't bullshit me. Yeah.
And she's not even serving Blackthorn. The love. So this is maybe a slightly controversial take, but the sort of love relationship with Blackthorn, it's bullshit. It's mirage. Where are they going to go? Oh yeah, we'll just get in my ship and sail away. The fuck?
Yeah.
You're going to stay? Oh, are you going to stay in Blackthorn in Japan? And
Blackthorn's got a wife. Him staying in Japan is more feasible. He could absolutely do that.
Sure.
He has status now. But there's still Buntaro,
Yeah, there's still Buntaro. So even if they get divorced, she's going to be the barbarian? Like, that's crazy. From this,
there's historical precedence, but yeah.
It's very tenuous. It's a very tenuous, they're going to have a loving family relationship and some sort of, no, it's not going to work. And so to me, it's a mirage. And she's dealing with so much grief and stress and trauma of her background. She can't show that to anyone else in Japan. But she can come out from behind her eightfold fence with Blackthorn speaking English, Portuguese, Latin, whatever they're speaking. And she can be authentic with him. And so I think the romance is a mirage over the intimacy and the fact that she can be authentic with another human being and, with what she's dealing with.
Right. I think there's a sexual component to it, but at the end of the day, it's finding someone that you can feel like yourself around more, where you don't have to be so careful.
Exactly. But then how is that actually going to play out in a real, you're going to have a household, you're going to have babies, you're going to go Blackthorn.
There's no happy ending for them.
No.
Yeah. This is not a spoiler for me knowing things. This is just, there's no happy ending.
Yeah. Just a note about that. If you want to make a comment on our podcast because we slipped on a spoiler or something like that, don't get all hot, Somebody left.
But I didn't. Somebody left a comment, but it was about But it was about actually that saying that I spoiled something, which I didn't spoil because I didn't know, which is my theory, which I brought up again this week, that that Buntaro was a spy, and then some book people were like, or history people were like, nah, and I still think also, Nagakado didn't die in the book, so we don't know what's going to happen on the show.
Right, exactly. So. Anyway, somebody left an unclank. So if you want to help us, we can go leave some nice comments to counterbalance that. Anyway, the idea that she's saying that she's serving him utterly is not true. It's a lie, because and she's not even serving Blackthorn. This is my slightly controversial take. She's so fixated on her death that she's not serving anybody. That's the only thing that she's fixated on. Blackthorn's a mirage. She's trapped in a marriage. Maybe she really loves, I would assert that she really loves her son. But everything else, she's fixated on death. So she's serving the idea of her death. She's not serving Toranaga, nor Blackthorn, nor Buntaro, nor the Toranaga clan writ large.
Yeah. See, I don't like this whole, and I know it comes from the book, the whole characterization of like what Madoka wants more than anything is to die. And maybe she's thought that for a long time because she just, her marriage sucks, but she'd had her son. So I don't really believe, and I think that she would still want to live for her son because she clearly loves him.
Right. So but she gives Toranaga the knife. She's like, but she's like, end it. Like in the moment when Toranaga's like,
but she knew he wouldn't. Yeah,
you're here. I need you to be over here. I need you to commit.
Yeah,
and in your heart and in your mind and in your soul, you need to commit to are you here or are you there? I command you to make a choice. And she doesn't choose that. She pulls out the dagger and says, this is
but
my
I
choice.
think she knew that Toranaga was never going to agree to that.
Allow
like
her.
On some, and it was a dramatic reaction. Like people get in fights and someone will say like, "Oh, you just probably want me dead." And like, no, we're just fighting.
Right. Exactly. It's not the end all. Yeah. But then he's pissed because she won't choose, and she's living in this sort of mirage. Where she's not. She's living in a fog of her own creation here, in a sense. It's like, you come from your father dishonored your family name, but I have a place for you, and you are valued, and you're helping your clan, and you're living into your father's memory. So, choose life, I guess.
Right.
Blackthorn, he's hardly. This is not a Blackthorn centric show anymore.
No, which is good, I think. Too. Yeah. I mean, he's in it enough, and the one thing he keeps bringing up every time he shows up is like, "Where's my boat? Where's my boat?" Did you see somebody made a meme that was it was the boyfriend being distracted by the girl walking by.
Oh, right. Yeah, that one. Yes.
But they had the boyfriend was Blackthorn's face, and he's holding Madoka's hand, and then he's looking at his,
over his
ship walking by.
Perfect.
Yeah. So that's got to play out. I'm like, okay, show me what's going on with the ship, and maybe the Dutchman who weirdly speak English will be on it.
We'll see. Yeah, like is it a Chekhov's ship? Are we going to get it? Is the gun going to get fired in the third act? We'll see. Are the cannons going to? He certainly says to Toranaga says to his brother, the cannon tactics are really important to our cause, and so it's still possible, but there's a lot of work to get the ship back into shape, and he doesn't have a full crew to fight all the cannons. So we've got to see. And they haven't been trained. Well, they've been training on the cannons, but firing a cannon on land is a very different proposition than firing a cannon on a ship. So, it's a basis of training, but there's still a lot of particulars you have to learn for naval combat and warfare. Role of the ship and the kickback of the cannon and the ropes and all that there's a lot of stuff, a lot of technique.
Yeah.
The fight with Yabushige on the beach.
Yeah, that was so good. That was actually the most I liked Yabushige in the show.
he's like, why am I even talking to you? And then, and then he says, when he says the pissing in the wind line, and he sort of gestures it. You know? He knew
and
that
you
that
just
would
have to imagine, you have to imagine being in John's place and like what he's interpreting of just like syllables and then random gestures and like
maybe a hint of a word or like you know a phrase or something.
I like another point. They didn't even put it in the subtitles, but Monica was talking about him, and when they're going to meet the brother. Psyche, and she says Anjin is part of what she says, and that wasn't even in the subtitle, but just like saying Anjin, he's like, you're talking about me. Yeah. Just one of those subtle things they let pass by if you didn't notice it.
Perfect. Yeah. But again, the attention to detail and the directing and the acting. And to the point that when Blackthorn pulls out his sword, dude, like, why haven't you been practicing? You've been carrying these damn things around for weeks. Like, why aren't you getting some instruction?
Why is nobody teaching you?
At least be able passably defensible.
I know.
But he pulls it out, and what does he do? He stands in a European inspired fencing.
Yeah. What else is he going to do? Yeah.
Right. He stands with his body parallel to the sword blade, you know, one foot in front of the other, and he's holding the tip out.
And I think they found that interesting. That's when they were like, oh, okay, maybe you're not a complete idiot. There's something.
Oh, but wait, you are.
Yeah. And then he just knocks it out of his hand, and he's like, you know, I'm not a swordsman. Give me my guns.
That's right. So I think too, he's wary with Yabushige, but he knows that he's probably ultimately safe with Yabushige because they do have a little bit of a bond from their early days and helping him with the cliff and such. And yeah, he might get cut or, you know, something untoward might happen, but it's not until Buntaro shows up that Blackthorn is really afraid for his life. And all season long, we've been hearing Blackthorn. Well, all season, early on in the season, he's like, "Nope, not today. This is not where I die." Right? He's like, "I'm going to fight and live through this." But in this moment, he surrenders to Buntaro and says, "Okay, if this is it, do it. I'm ready. Kill me now."
Right.
Which is interesting. There's a book scene which I don't know if I want to talk about it, but there's a whole thing where Blackthorn, and it's in the 80s miniseries in one of the early, I believe in the second episode, early on in the second episode or at the end of the first episode, because those things are like 3 hours long, 2-3 hours long.
Wow.
Where there is this whole thing where Blackthorn does consider seppuku. I won't say anything more about it, but it's the one point where Blackthorn gives up. And I think, and it's not been in this. So when he gives up to Buntaro here, I think that's maybe a mirror of that scene, even though they've extracted that from the book and the 80s television series. The last thing I'll say that I have, I don't know if you have anything more on Blackthorn, is that I did think that Yabushige was pretty impressed with Blackthorn's mic drop when he left the surrendering ceremony. He's like, all right, peace out, dudes. Yabushige, my bro, I see you. I'm out. You're all dead.
I mean, I was actually surprised that they didn't look more angry with him, because it did seem like the typical which you would expect. The hot-headed European comes in just like yelling about things he doesn't understand. But then
the honor of a woman, is no one going to stop him?
But now, that was well played. But now I guess maybe he was able to give voice to something that the others felt held back by their positions from doing. And they all wanted to say that. And they're like, that's what he's saying, the thing we all want to say. And coming as this outsider from a different culture, he has the ability to do that.
100%. That's a really good take. He's just, because even Toranaga's brother just kind of looks over his shoulders, is like, fucking barbarian, whatever's. But all the other dudes are like, God, I wish we could. Because the moment any one of Toranaga's retainers even make a twitch, swords are coming out and the fight is going to be on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we saw that with Tadayoshi when he even put a toe on the mat inside of the regent rooms, everybody was on guard and ready to throw down. So, okay, let's just really quickly touch on the Regents Council and the Jesuits. Nothing from the Jesuits this episode. And do you think it was Lady Ochiba, who recommended Sakei for the regent seat? That seems like a devious plan that she would get along. But I don't see him getting along very well with Ishido. I don't think those guys would play nice together on the Regents Council.
Who does play nice in the Regents Council? I think it's
a very good point. I mean, even the Christians aren't playing nice with each other, right?
Right.
So, but they did have to backfill for Sugiyama because Sugiyama tried to escape the town in the last episode, and Ishido murdered him on the road. So they had one extra seat.
What do you mean? That was the bandits.
Oh, yes, right. Sorry. They have a bandit problem in Osaka. So we had Lord Ito, who was the theatrical one who took one of the seats, and then they had to backfill that second seat. Okay, let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll wrap up with our favorite moments and a few feedback comments from our Discord. And we're back. Okay, so let's go over some of our favorite moments, and then we'll talk about some feedback. So, Elysia, what are some of your favorite moments from this episode?
We talked about a lot of them. So, yeah, Nobutatsu's introduction was iconic. Right. Gin made the most of her stick of time. I think that, I love the way that they revealed the reality of this whole head chopping incident. And I just think the death scene was so well done. Just a feeling of helplessness and like what a waste it was. And just the questions it leaves on where does this leave them? And might this be a secret blessing to Toranaga in terms of getting him out of this situation? Right. Yeah. And will it blow back on Nobutatsu?
Yeah. And I think it's a really great setup because did they have a secret alliance or did they not? Does it matter because there's going to be consequences coming out of this, and it's going to how they unfold is what's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. And what were your?
Yeah, mine. I think Yabushige's comment about it depends on the woman, just like my man Yabushige. He's like, well, I don't know. It depends on the woman. You know, like what a line, what a baller line. He just continues to be this a really crazy character, even to the point where he like points at the pot on the beach. He's like, oh, too bad. You know, you probably wish you were in that pot now.
Right.
Hell. But anyway, the depends on the woman was just such an iconic line from his character. It was so perfect.
Yeah, no, he's such an interesting character because he's like a squirmy little rat of a character, kind of, but then also at the same time, he's so relatable and likable, whether you want to like him or not.
and Toranaga keeps him around because it's like, okay, you're gonna fuck around.
Yeah.
But I know you're going to try to do that. And I know it's not going to go well for you. So like, I'm cool with keeping you because you're actually quite useful in other ways. So
yeah,
he's probably a good fighter, right?
He's a pawn that he can move around the chessboard.
Yeah. And he knows how he moves and so he can contain him. And I'm sure he's very deadly. I have no doubt that he, rise to the rank of the Lord of the province,
Lord,
yeah, that he's actually got some skills. My other two favorites of the scene sort of roll from one to the other. They're both Lady Gin when she talks about how in the Willow World how they pour their life out. And all of their beauty and cunning, or what? Just I forget. I wish I had the lines more fixed in my memory. But she talks about, I have given all of myself to this whatever life. I started from the gutter and I clawed my way up. And what is it going to mean? What is it, what's the value of that, of all this life force that I've poured into servicing the puerile needs of powerful men who are freaking idiots, right? Like from her point of view. And just the passion that she delivered that from, and then the fact that it was tied to a practical outcome. Give me some land so I could set up a guild, and everything. And Toranaga is so impressed by this that he actually sits back, and he actually, if you watch the scene again, he takes a little breath. He's like, "Oh, damn!" And he can see it.
Right.
He can see it as fast as she's laying it out. And I just loved the passion and clarity at which she delivered not only her personal backstory, but then, this convincing argument that she gives to Toranaga. So that was a really enjoyable scene. And then my final favorite moment of the episode was her mic drop. Oh, what do I know? I'm just an old whore. Boom, out. And just like in your face, man. Like that was so awesome. She was, it was just an incredible turn, because we just thought she was a conniving madam who's sort of, only
but
after
she
her
is,
silver.
yeah.
She is, yeah. But she's so much more. Even Nagakato says to her, go back to counting your silver. And she's like, oh, little puppy, if you only knew. So, but yeah, her a couple of good mic drops in this. Yeah, Blackthorn walking out from the council meeting, and then this one when the stick of time is up. And Elysia, I think our stick of time is near
burning low
as well. Burning low as well. What do we have from the Discord boards? And again, y'all, we want your feedback. Please email us in. It's really the most efficient way for us to incorporate feedback. Since Discord conversations are kind of a real-time flow thing, it's hard sometimes to pull the thread, whereas with your emails, they're a bit more static, and we can work with them as well, doing your voicemails. So send emails to Shogun at thelorehounds.com, or head over to the website, lorehounds.com, and on the contact page, there's a form, one of those contact forms you can fill out, or the voicemail tool is there. Okay, what do we have for episode 7?
Okay, well, let's check in with our resident Discord historian, Nate. I'm sorry, don't mean to. For anyone who doesn't know, his name's Nathan Ledbetter, and he is a PhD candidate at Princeton who has spent his entire academic and career devoted to the Japanese history and culture. And
this
military.
is his moment. He just showed up in the Discord like, hello,
He's
I'm
like,
Nate.
I know all the things. This is literally my specialty.
Absolutely. And Nate, we're really glad to have you in our community. Thank you so much for offering everything that you've done. We're glad that I'm sure you're participating in other places, but we really do appreciate you being here. And we hope that you stick around after, the show, because...
Well, I think he was interested in House of the Dragon too. So.
Oh, perfect. That's great. Yeah. I was listening to, I do listen to a lot of The Ringer. I really like a lot of their quality and the conversations that they have. But I noticed something the other day. They're very sports oriented. Like
that's how they started.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of Joanna, not so much. And maybe, Andy on The Watch, they don't have as much sports, but everybody else, all of the editors and a lot of the other co-hosts, all come from a sports lens, so they compare players and seasons. Oh, Nagakato went out like this particular baseball team did during their season. So, but we don't have that. Our thing is less that. Our thing is more like a literary kind of inspired thing. And
we were the nerds in class. Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. With our Dungeons and Do-Rags, as Ron said, we're there. So, but anyway, I forgot what my point was on there. Anyway, Nate, we hope you stick around, join us for some other shows. I'm looking forward to talking with you when we do our season wrap up. And again, we're going to have a season wrap up. Probably that'll drop about a week after the final episode. I can't believe it's going to be a final episode. And so get your feedback in for us for that, Shogun at thelorehounds.com. Okay, over to the Discord.
So Nate, first he responded to some questions we asked on the last podcast, and he said about No, which is the theater that we saw last episode. He said yes to all of that, what we said. He said many/most daimyo, especially the Taiko, Kuroda, etc., acted in No plays.
Okay.
Like the official podcast said, Hideyoshi, the Taiko, wrote 11 plays about himself and then acted as himself in the plays. It was yet another way to proclaim how awesome you were.
Fair enough.
And then, he said the play in this episode was fascinating in that it was a No play depicting the Taiko and people sitting there in the audience. So, the people in the audience were the characters on stage.
Right.
And then, we asked about what the meaning of kosho was. So he clarifies that kosho is a page or young male attendant. High-ranking samurai or daimyo would have had several attending them at all times, and often they had sexual relationships with their masters.
Oh, interesting.
So the implication here in this episode was that at least Ishido in his position was because he was the best at kissing the Taiko's ass. It may also be that he owes his position to serving the Taiko sexually, but it's not said clearly. And
that's interesting. You know what it makes me think of is I didn't finish it, but The House of Usher.
Yeah.
One of the children with her assistants.
For those who did finish it, I have an entire deep dive with all of the Poe references on
nice.
Will Shift
Very
Dust.
good, ready to come.
Yeah.
Okay. It's already out. But yeah, she's, has relationships with her assistants. I think we could pull up. I don't know how cliche it is, but in terms of in Roman era, I think there was a lot of relationships between in that way. So with powerful people, so that's interesting.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense that sex is often tied to manipulation of sex is tied to manipulation of power.
Absolutely, and then it's not until a Western modern context where extramarital sex is problematic, right? It was
very
not
Christian
problematic prior to a certain monotheism.
Yeah, I call them the three cousins.
Right.
Judaism, Islam, and
weird little thing too about the dudes always in the background. Somebody else verify this for me. I know it's got to be different actors, but behind every lord, there's usually a couple of dudes back, like with carrying the swords or delivering the messages. And they all look like the same actor to me because they all have the same sort of ponytail haircut and size and face. And I'm sure there's some deliberateness in there, but they all look the same to me. It looks like the same actor, but it can't be. But yet they fall into a very specific physical type of individual. And I wonder if that's intentional. Anyway, side note, moving on.
Yeah. Okay, so Nate elaborates on the kosho. They were usually the sons of daimyo's senior retainers. For example, it would have been completely normal for Buntaro to be a kosho to Toranaga as the son of his retainer, Toda Hiromatsu. And it's not necessarily also indicative of a homosexual relationship, but it would have been fairly common. And certain daimyo kosho pairings were famous. The kosho would, quote unquote, graduate once they reached an old enough age, usually around the time they reached adulthood, and performed their genpuku, an adulthood ceremony where they got their samurai hairstyle, etc.
Nice.
They'd then often go on to be prominent retainers in their own right. In a few cases, we have evidence that the sexual/emotional relationships continued even after the warrior grew out of the kosho role.
Okay. Interesting that, notwithstanding the sexual role, but the idea of a page in medieval European history, where you would squire for a night, and that was your apprenticeship. Or, I'm a noble lord, so my son will go work with my higher liege lord to learn the ways of power and to do service like that. So interesting that the two vastly different human cultures came up with the same solution. I won't say answer to the question, but same sort of similar structures. Interesting.
Right.
Cool.
Right. Yeah. And so Nate also says about the previous episode, and we asked about the name of Ochiba Nobokata or Nokata. And he says one of the hardest things about studying this period is keeping track of names and titles. The official podcast did a good job of explaining Ochiba no kata. The only thing I'd add is that kata can also mean person in a respectful sense, especially in modern polite Japanese. But the Japanese men and women would change names and modes of address frequently. And in the same document, sometimes you can have one person referred to as 2 to 3 different ways. So you almost need a flowchart to keep it all straight. Conversely, you can sometimes date a document based on which modes of address they used if you know when someone changed their name or title.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I think, at least in European context, historically speaking, you can date documents because of, same sort of thing. How many these and theys and ofs and thes. So,
yeah. How many last names do they have? And so, he says about episode 7 that he's thoroughly enjoying being this confused.
Nice.
Like I know where the major story beats should be and all, but I really don't understand how it's all going to play out, and I like it. So that's interesting.
Is awesome. That means that the showrunners are doing their job. The writer's room on this was on fire.
He knows the book, he knows the history, and still doesn't know what's going to happen. Yeah.
Bravo.
And so he says about the opening scene 46 years ago. So this means that in the present, Toranaga's 58, and the battle here took place in 1554. This is interesting, as Toranaga would, if they follow history, have been a hostage or / forced into the service of whomever in the story equals Imagawa Yoshimoto.
Okay.
I don't know what particular battles, Tokugawa Ieyasu, which is a Toranaga real world equivalent, fought in 1554, if any, off the top of my head. But at age 18, the ages are more or less accurate. Ieyasu would lead the vanguard of Imagawa's forces at Okehazama in 1560. This saved his life because he was in fortifications he had captured when Yoshimoto was attacked and demolished by Oda Nobunaga. And in 1554, the Imagawa were skirmishing with the Oda and probably other minor opponents. So, so basically what we saw depicted on screen might have been in real life, his real historical counterpart. What saved his life was being that he took this fortification and was thus safe there when his allies were taken out.
Got it. Yeah. Cool.
Oh, and
I love the fact that the writers' room are sweating the details too, even if even when they're diverting from source book material or historical antecedents, they're thinking about it and not going, oh, we'll wave our hands and magic wand, something happened. They're actually constructing the detail very carefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another point to that is his next point, which is about the hat that you were bringing up. Psyche's armor is amazing. The helmet is modeled on the Nageboshi style, or the long / tall court cap, made to resemble an imperial court noble's cap, among others. So there was someone named Kato Kiyomasa who was famous for this, but you'll have to, Nate, clarify who that is if they're relevant to the history.
So I just put in Kiyomasa on the Googles, and there is a statue of him somewhere. I don't know where it is just yet. Here's TripAdvisor. Will that tell me? Let me visit. Where there's a dude wearing this hat.
Okay, yeah.
There it is. It's totally here.
So if you want to see, Google that name if you want to see the historical hat that it's referencing. Yeah,
Kumamoto Castle. Kumamoto Scaling Daimo and Kumamoto Castle.
And he adds that the actor for Psyche, the Okuno Eita, is good. And I don't know him from other things we might be one to watch for in the future. And I agree, because he's got that spark in him where if he's on screen, you're going to be looking at him.
100%.
He says, I love that the letter from the council is in decently proper Soroban, the particular document writing style of the day. I wouldn't expect anything less from the production crew, but it made me happy to hear Hiramatsu read it.
Nice.
Easy to wonder where this scene with Ojin is why this scene with Ojin is included. Who cares about the establishment of pleasure quarters in Edo right now? I don't know, me. But I think it's pretty important. Her appraisal of Toranaga's situation is a clue to where things go, especially given that he later instructs two cho of land to go to her in Edo. For the record, 2 cho of land is 4.9 acres.
Nice. Yeah, I did wonder about the size, but it didn't pick up on the detail. And I think it's really interesting that, again, that there's a historical, there's a real historical thing where a quote unquote red light district or whatever, and then whether this is where the actual source of it came from or not, but it's a cool tie back to a real to the real history.
Yeah, absolutely. He makes a point. Glad to see Yabushige take some time to make an ad for the Izu Hot Springs Travel and Tourism Board. I mean, I'm sure that apparently, the novel Shogun that this is based on is started the whole Japanese craze of the 70s, where people started wearing kimonos and eating sushi and things like that.
So it re-sparked a historical renaissance.
And there's definitely apparently also an uptick in interest in Japanese culture with this show right now. They're seeing it online. The more searches, more. So I do bet that Izu is bracing for some tourism incoming. So then he brings up the scene with Yabushige and Blackthorn, and he says it's hilarious until it's not, but one thing bothers me. Sure, Blackthorn is a sailor, but he's the pilot of a trading and raiding fleet. The idea that he doesn't know how to use a sword seems bollocks. Yeah. Sure, he hasn't trained specifically with a katana, but why wouldn't he wield it like a cutlass? Wrong, but at least something more than, ooh, I don't know what to do with a sword nonsense we see here, which, yeah, fair. I mean, I guess I just took it as like the gun is his preferred weapon, but he must have, to be an officer on a ship, or I forget what his status was before.
Pilot.
Before before the captain died. But
Right.
But to be an officer on a ship, he must have had at least some sword training.
And to do the raiding parties that they're supposedly, the piratical stuff that they were.
But I guess he uses a gun. But
but the gun is a single shot. It's like you fire one and that's it. You might have a couple on your person. Then that's not going to happen in a battle in a close quarters battle like that. So he has to know how to fight. I think my guess in this situation is that he's not trying to antagonize Yabushige into actually hurting him. He's going to play kind of stupid a little bit and go, ho, okay, you punched me, you got me, he's not going to, because if he actually swings out or swings back, it's going to get, not that Yabushige would have killed him, but those are sharp swords.
Yeah.
Right.
But also it might be just like his uncertainty in the moment of like, what's going on? What is this?
True. That's a really good point.
Is he teaching me or is he attacking me?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I guess it was the humiliating mostly, but yeah. Why is nobody teaching this man to use his swords?
Head scratcher. Anyway,
he says the Nagakado Fuji scene is huge in Insight. Nagakado was moping that he didn't take action in Osaka and her late husband did. You can tell he doesn't get it at all. He doesn't at all get the point. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Which was, I think I made that call out earlier, which was that's really when he feels the shame and he acts from a place of shame, not a place of strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then, his last point is I'm having trouble with how to talk about the Mariko Buntaro Toranaga scene and then the Toranaga Mariko conversation that happens after. One podcast was explaining how confused they were that in previous episodes she seemed to be growing as a character with opening
you're listening to other podcasts, Nate?
What?
Shock drama. That's the one thing I do like about podcasts. What's that? Sorry, I missed
it. To other podcasts too.
So do I. That's one of the nice things about being a we're not exclusive, right? I like that about the business marketplace of podcasting is you can be polyamorous with your podcasts.
Right. But sorry, I interrupted your point.
No, that was my point. That was, I interrupted you. Carry on, please.
But so one podcast was explaining how confused they were. That it seemed to be growing as a character, opening up to Blackthorn, knowing that she has to live to fulfill her father's goals. But then in this episode asks Toranaga for permission to die. I don't think it's really a contradiction. It's an emotional reaction. I agree. That was Elysia interjecting. Nate says, what I don't know is who exactly are the enemies of her father who are still out there. He killed Kuroda, and they haven't really shown us who the revenge needs to be directed against. Ochiba? Ishido? The heir? I don't know. I can only hope that becomes more apparent. I can't speculate more without being spoilery.
Got it. I would think that the Taiko. It's a good question. There's evil in the land, and even if I'm thinking of that line now, slightly tangentially, where Toranaga says there might be evil in the land, but you still don't sunder the realm for your own sort of personal ambitions. But then, what is it that they're fighting for? What is victory? What is the condition of victory
you say that you don't sunder the land for your personal ambitions, but I think that it's the rare person. I believe Toranaga thinks that way, but I think it's the rare person in the world in general who actually thinks that way. And it's one of our many human foibles that we tend to think people will think more logically than they actually do. And in reality, people tend to operate more selfishly and short-sightedly.
It sounds like you could almost be describing our current political climate in certain parts of the world. Anyway,
in all of the world, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I could see Mariko. I mean, what is the only thing that I can really read without getting into the, does Toranaga really want to be Shogun or not, is that he's committed to the heir, the Taiko's heir. And that is the correct and proper path.
Yeah, so, I don't see him hurting that kid, and regardless.
Yeah, even regardless of Ochiba and whatever she's up to. And I think Toranaga. If he set up Toranaga's, if Toranaga set up Mariko's father to be the assassin to kill the crazy daimyo or Taiko at the time, whatever the guy was, his official title was. And they're trying to preserve the realm, and he did it to preserve. Maybe that's it. Toranaga et al. Are trying to preserve and stabilize the realm, and that's Mariko's father's fight: is stability within the realm and following this line of succession that should keep everyone in line. That's the best I can make out of it.
Yeah. Well, Abby responded about the Mariko side. She said, personally, I interpreted her playing the death card as a diplomatic go-to in order to not be policed about what her feelings might be regarding anything really. Her fences are very folded indeed. Toranaga shouted at her to choose between her supposed duty and John Blackthorne, and she was like, nope, I will not choose. You can choose for me, Lord. If you are so displeased, go ahead and do it. A parallel with the John Blackthorne scene with Buntaro on the beach, the go ahead then. Yeah.
Nice job, Abby. That's a good call. That's a really good call. They're the two characters are mirroring each other then.
I think that, like I said before, I think Mariko is kind of being a petulant child in that moment.
Agreed. Agreed. Get over yourself. You're living with the stain of your father's whatever. He did it for the realm. Toranaga has a place for you to stabilize and protect the realm. Get over it, right? Choose now. And sometimes that's what we have to do, is have the courage to change something in our lives that is something that we're holding on to, that we're not willing to let go. And it takes courage to let go and to choose a new path for ourselves. And it's hard. But sometimes you just got to do it, right? You gotta just get over it. I tell this story sometimes. I had to tap the back of my daughter's sled to get her to go sledding down a hill her first time on the sled. And she loves it, right? Like, she didn't make the choice. I made the choice for her, my parent, whatever, that she was, younger. But sometimes that step over into something new is scary. And whether you muster the energy yourself or somebody helps you over the threshold. And so he's trying to help her over the threshold, I think, in this moment.
Yeah. I just pulled up a couple other little comments from the Discord. So Paulson20 says, what a crazy ending with the death of Nagakado, which I didn't expect at all. He was always so reckless, though. I didn't think Ishido was that smart in appointing Saiki as another regent. Maybe Ochiba had something to do with that.
Bingo.
With the forces surrounded, I was wondering how Toranaga would get out of this, and we still don't know. I also thought at one point that if Lady from the Willow World, Gin, help Toranaga as well, because courtesans could be privy to some secret info. Or maybe he also means Kiku, which I think in both cases they're working with Toranaga. And I may be actually thinking about the whole one stick of time. Maybe she was in a way subtly bartering you give me this land and I will be your spy.
I'll be very grateful and disposing of your requests and
right. I mean, because she showed that she's willing to, as much as she professes to be a steel trap of information, she certainly was willing to drop that Blackthorn intel.
That's a good tell, right? And so they're letting us know that she's not above that kind of thing. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. Good insight.
And Pawson also says, I'm wondering if Toranaga's half-brother is faking the alliance with Ishido and working for Toranaga secretly. Big question. Where are we going to find out? Like, we're going to have the curtain revealed at the end of the series, I think, and have the alliances revealed, I hope.
So far, they have built connected. Yeah, the trust that the showrunners and the writers have built I'm willing to put my hand in theirs and close my eyes and take me where you want to go, and just trusting that the appropriate things are going to be revealed when they're going to have the best dramatic impact, like Nagakato's death.
Yeah. And speaking of Nagakato's death, the last comment is from Adrian, who says, that was a fitting death for Nagakato. Hubris plus fate conspiring to give him a spectacularly unspectacular death. I thought the minute that Nobutatsu put the robe on that this was way too long.
Yes.
An interesting plot device. Yeah.
Yep. I think I just go back to that scene of Nagakato holding the sword over his head and about to strike the death blow, and you can see his adrenaline is up, his heart is pounding. I'm actually going to do it. I'm actually doing it. I'm actually doing it. And then, nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Not for you, my friend. All right.
Oh, may he rest in
something. Pour one out for Nagakato. All right. Another amazing episode. Can't wait. So going forward, we're assuming that John's going to be back, but we talked about this a little bit. We have a scheduling conundrum where John's schedule doesn't allow him to record in the mornings, where my schedule does. You're in a different time zone, so we can do this, but it's harder for John. If we waited till Saturday, that's hard because of his family schedule, weekday, blah, blah. So you can see where I'm going here. It's very complex. And I don't want to not have your voice on this podcast. I don't think that would be the right thing for you, for the listeners, for anybody. So I think what we'll try to do, if this is good with you, Elysia, is maybe you and I will record some, if you've got a handful of takes, right, we can get you and I can record. We can drop that into the episode when John and I do the finish recap on Thursday nights. Does that work for you?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, cool. And then we'll do a group season wrap up. Yeah. We'll figure out the scheduling for that. We'll have a little bit more flexibility with it. So never fear, dear listener. We will make sure that all the takes are given. The take factory never closes. And Lorehound Central. All right, so let's wrap up really quick. Again, thank you all so very much for listening. Thank you to our subscribers. If you're interested in supporting the community, because it's not just John and I, this isn't just our business. This is a side thing that we do, but we have a very thriving and we have a huge and growing community. I'm sort of doing the hands gesture thing as a bad politician might. Anyway, setting that aside, if you have an interest in supporting the community, check us out on Supercast or Patreon. The links for those are in the show notes. Supercast is like Patreon. We actually want to eventually move more towards Supercast. It's a better platform. We get a better return. We have more control. We're going to be adding some new features to that as we go forward. And again, funds are distributed to paying for software subscriptions and websites and making sure that our co-hosts, their creativity and input is valued as well. So it's a really important part of keeping things running over here. So if you have an interest in that, great. We really appreciate it. And if not, no worries. It's all good. If you are interested in joining the conversation real time, like Elysia, you did pulling up some really great comments from Nate and Abby and Adrienne and Paulson. That conversation is rolling constantly. And we have multiple channels for all the different projects that we have going on and the different shows that we're going to be covering or have covered. Even for Shogun, we've set up a separate siloed thread. So each episode has its own place to have conversation that doesn't spoil the other ones. We've got a great mod team helping us run the Discord and keeping the wheels on the place. So if you want to have that kind of extra conversation, join us there. Again, links are in the show notes. We have several affiliate podcasts that we sponsor, friends and other people who are into the podcasting game, like Anthony and Steve on Properly Howard Movie Review. Anthony, of course, has the Electric Boogaloo podcast, which, Elysia, you were just on.
Yeah. Look up the Sansa 4 episode where we talk about, especially about Sansa's character arc in Clash of the Kings, but also we talk about the Hound and all the Lannisters and good.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I really thought that it was an interesting. I think you brought this up. Was that pour one out for Lady, but Sansa loses Lady, but she gains a Hound. Right. Or was
Anthony made that point.
Oh, Anthony made that. Okay.
My point was, but she can't warg into him.
True. And we're excited. We're looking forward to House of the Dragon coming up. I know Anthony's got they've got a kind of a, what do you call it? Like a draft thing, like a fantasy league thing going for it. That was really fun. I played Auctioneer for one of the things when they drafted their characters and phrases and stuff. Anyway, Properly Howard Movie Review is on a little bit of a break, but I know Anthony's personal life schedule is busy right now, but they have a concept for their next movie review season. And when that is ready, we will let you know. And of course, we're waiting for Severance. And just to remind everyone that a full season 1 Severance recap is on their feed right now. You can go back and listen to that. And then once we have dates for season 2, we'll let everybody know, because we're going to do a joint coverage between Anthony, Steve, John, and myself. Elysia, you have some stuff in the hopper. I know we've got Dune stuff still going on, but you've got some new Star Wars stuff.
Well, first of all, the Beacon 23 is the season 2 starts on the 7th. So around the time that this podcast is going up on the We'll Shift Us feed, there is a final preview for season 2, which includes an interview with Hugh Howey, author of the books, one of the executive producers on the show. So that was definitely an interesting talk. And we actually talked a lot about war in the military that syncs up with what we talked about here in this episode today.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
And Dune coming there and all the usual stuff on. And
I know Anthony had started to work on this, but I think I'm going to pick up the ball. We're going to have some extended Dune conversations where we are intentionally going to be looking at different big story IPs like Tolkien, like Foundation, like Star Wars. I think we got to do
Wheel of Time too.
Wheel of Time,
it's all mixed up in there.
Yeah, I think we could even go MCU. Yeah. So I see a series of podcasts, a series of conversations, bringing in different experts and voices from the outer world. Sorry,
put an echo on that.
Yes, exactly. He said, "Okay," to bring in some conversations around that. Game of Thrones, of course, is included in that. So I'm going to probably be working on that a little in the background. So we're going to do that, but you're going to be resident Dune expert, I think, for that, as well as it's great because everybody's sort of cross-functional. Marilyn has Tolkien and Foundation. Right. John has Game of Thrones and Tolkien and Star Wars, and you've got Star Wars as well. And Anthony's got Game of Thrones and Tolkien, and we've just got to.
If you tend to like this sort of storytelling, then these are the big heavy hitters that you're likely to have.
Exactly. Into. And I'm really interested in a whole conversation set around looking at how these different story worlds are interrelated. So anyway, in progress. We also have, I mentioned Radioactive Ramblings briefly, which is going to be our Fallout coverage. Well, not our Fallout coverage. One of our mods, Aaron K, is getting on the mic with his buddy Chase, and they're going to do a Fallout podcast. It's a binge drop, unfortunately, but they are going to do, I think, 3 or 4 podcasts, and they're going to break up the episodes into some bundles and talk about them individually. That is going to be on a separate feed. We'll probably release their episode 1 on this main feed. But if you want Fallout coverage, you're going to need to go and look up their feed. We're getting the feed set up. we'll make sure that we advertise it on future things. It'll be on the lorehounds.com website. It'll automatically get populated there. And we'll make sure on the Discord, there's a channel set up already for them called Radioactive Ramblings. So you can go there and request, hey, I try to find the podcast. Where do I get it? You can get the link there, or just message us, like just drop an email. Hey, how do I get this podcast? So go check that out. Well, the feed's not set up. It's going to be set up shortly. And once we do, we'll set up we'll put out a little teaser on the main channel. But lastly, Rings and Rituals episode 2 just dropped this week. That is Marilyn Arpakila, our favorite Tolkien scholar, and her compatriot, Dr. Sarah Brown of Signum University. They are going deep Tolkien on Rings of Power season 1. They are analyzing the show for the rituals that are in the show. So they're unpacking what we see on screen, talking about it relative to the Tolkien legendarium, but then also looking at it from, what is ritual? What roles do rituals play in our real lives on a day-to-day basis? So it's a fascinating conversation, really interesting. Marilyn and Sarah, again, separate feed, link in the show notes, or jump on the Discord. We have a channel set up for just those conversations. Coming in the future, we got sidetracked a little bit. Just a quick note about John. I don't want to go into too many details. We talked about it on our second Breakfast Patreon and Supercast exclusive podcast, where John and I talk a little bit more about our lives. He had some family emergency stuff going on with his mom. She's okay, but he had to be with her in and out of hospital and a whole bunch of stuff. That is all now mostly resolved, and so John will be back to a normal schedule very soon. But thank you all for your patience. I had COVID earlier this month, so we kind of just blew up all of our side projects and everything. So we're now just getting settled back into things. We're going to continue with our Star Wars Film Festival, and we've got A New Hope, which that'll be our next one. I know for Halo Season 2 and for Halo the Game, Jean, and Brandon are talking, and they're going to do a podcast at some point about that. Brandon's schedule has been a little crazy, and they've been trying to bring everything together. We still have an Earthsea to wrap up, and we still have Silmarillion stories to come. We're just working through the scheduling kinks as they come out now, or as we're working through all this now. Coming into the summer, we have House of the Dragon. That'll be day 1 coverage. Rings of Power, I don't know. We're waiting for that probably towards the end of the year. The Acolyte, Elysia, we didn't even mention your new Star Wars project that you have coming up.
Yeah. So, we'll probably be pushing that out end of April, beginning of May. We'll have the feed online. But we're going to be doing the entire complete canon Star Wars timeline, starting with some preview episodes to talk a little bit about the Old Republic and the High Republic. And then the Acolyte, the new TV show, takes place at the end of the High Republic, which is, as far as what's been represented on screen, this is a whole new era of Star Wars, 100 years before the prequel trilogy. So we're going to start there with weekly coverage. And then after that, keep going through all of the Star Wars material in timeline order, so that we're watching this universe develop and unfold.
Right, and unfold. Very cool. And then we just got a new Star Wars drop, totally unexpected last night. What's the title of it? What are they calling it?
Tales of the Empire. So it's the sequel to Tales of the Jedi, but now they're focusing again on 2 characters, and again, one that's been a sort of minor on-screen character, which is Morgan Elsbeth. So known from Ahsoka.
And there are scenes actually from the Mandalorian Ahsoka episode. Was that season 2 of Mandalorian? That are her on that planet that they all fought on.
So we see how she got to that position. But I'm just very curious how this human-looking character, she doesn't look Dathmiri. So I'm very curious about her story. The other one is Barriss Offrey, who's a character from that only animated fans would know. And that seems to be the way they do it. Like last time it was so maybe they're bringing Barriss into live action if she survives this show. But she played a huge role in Ahsoka's fall in the Jedi in the series and then we never found out what happened to her. So people are very excited about that. And Thrawn shows up, and General Grievous, and it's just
I was freaking out when I watched it. I didn't even know about it. I saw it on one of your social media accounts.
No, it was a surprise drop. None of we figured there would be a Tales of the Jedi sequel, but not that it's like, whoa, it's coming out May the 4th, of course.
And then one of the things I noticed is they used the klaxon sounds from Rogue One, that and they used a variation of that in this, which had me hype because it had the just enough member berry, to like, oh wait, what? Well, that sound, like you call a generation with a sound, call a Star Wars fan with a Empire klaxon. Exactly. Okay, so then we have The Boys and The Bear. Those are all going to be coming out in June, so it's going to be a hot summer over here at the Lorehound Central. I know we're a little quiet right now. We're going to reset. We've got some more projects in the pipeline. So Monkey Man, I think we might do a one-shot on. 3 Body Problem. I know Ron messaged me, said he would like to do a one-shot on that. And we've got some other things in the pipeline. So thank you for your patience and bearing with us as we work through, because we do this on the side. This is not our day jobs. All of us are otherwise engaged. And so when life presents itself, sometimes we cannot but help to pay attention to it. Quick shout outs to our Discord server boosters, Opus the Machine, Gnarls, Aaron K, Tiller the Thriller, and Dork the Ninjas. Thank you guys so much for boosting the server. That gives us more emojis and more quality uploads and just more cool bells and whistles. So, and that's a real support to the community, because that all just goes to making sure that folks on Discord have a better experience. To our subscribers, both on Supercast and Patreon, these are our top tier subscribers who really help keep things flowing over here. We are forever grateful to all your support, and we always like to give everybody a quick shout out. So Samartian, Mark H, Michael G, Michelle E, David W, Brian P, Nick W, SC, I saw you. Thank you. I think SC just renewed. Thank you very much. Peter OH, Bettina W, Adam S, Nancy M. We're going to be talking. I know you got vacation coming up, but we're going to talk when you get back. Duve 71. Brian, and Duve, we got to talk to. Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Gareth C, Eric F, Matthew M, Sarah M, DJ Miwa, Andra B, Kwang Yu, Deadeye Jedi Bob, Nathan T, Alex V, Aaron T, Sub-Zero, Aaron K, Dally V21, Gnarls, and forever last but never least, Adrienne. Elysia, thank you so much again for joining. I've been having a lot of fun. Maybe John, you just sit down. No, we don't want to do that. But I've been having fun with you on this podcast. Yeah, so I really appreciate
it's been fun too. I didn't expect to be talking about this show, so maybe it's a blessing in disguise that I'm not as thoroughly prepared as I am.
Yeah, right. Isn't it fun just to go along for the ride sometimes?
Yeah, exactly.
100%. Awesome. Well, thank you again, and everyone. We will see you for Shogun 8. Until then.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.